Okay. Well, let's move on. How about Upset to Vitality? That seems like a spicy one that people
You know
would
what's
like
funny
to
about
talk
this one? This is an example of a move which you've noticed I've been saying the entire split I would do, because A, Upset is the best ADC in the West, and then B, right, if you don't know, he's tried to hook up with fucking Perks, something mental, like 4 times now, guys. It just kept not happening, or the deal went the other way, and one of them, Perks himself took the AD spot, etc. Right? There's a bunch of times it's going to happen. So that's one of the I thought there was 2 reasons it should happen. One, Upset's just amazing, and B, him and Perks just seem like exactly the sort of people you want to pair together, because Upset is the super driven guy who wants to be a winner and is really good individually, and Perks is the winner who wants the serious teammate that he can go along with to the top, and like you can rely on that guy. They're not a flake, they're not someone who does, just plays for fun or is just good and doesn't have a killer instinct. So to me, it's just a perfect blend of the two. I get why some people think, for example, like maybe they won't be able to weak side bot lane now, maybe Upset maybe Upset is demanding all these things. I don't worry about that, mate, because if the key thing with him is he follows what I call like the forgiven rule, which is if you're actually good enough, you are allowed to demand the resources. If you actually will carry the game, it's not only appropriate you demand them, it's sometimes necessary you demand the resources. Like, I won't say who, but I've got an interview coming out soon with an ADC player who is a good ADC player, but he even admits, Monte, one of the problems in his career is he was a kind of a quiet player. He's not the sort of player who would just tell people, like, look, I've won lane, like, come that group mid now, like, and wouldn't like shot call them up. He would expect them to sort of work around him and just know what he needs. So to me, I just think it's a slam dunk to fix the team, mate. Like, I can even see this fixing the Kaiser angle. Like, bro, Upset looked that good when Hylissang was just inted every bloody lane. Like, I'm sure he can get Kaiser on side. And clearly, and that, by the way, that's another thing I love about people like Double Lift, Upset, Forgiven. They aren't going to put around with any guff. When you leave the team, someone might say you were a dickhead, Monty. But when you're in the team, they'll make sure it works. It's like there's a great line Kobe had that was like that. Look, it's ruthless, but it's a great line. He said, friendships come and go, but banners are forever. It's a pretty good line, eh? It's a pretty good line. It's a pretty good, I can't lie, it's a pretty good line, mate.
I mean, also hilariously, it seems like Fnatic went crawling back to Upset after they got eliminated, and now Reckless is pissed. Reckless just living the tortured existence.
Oh, I've got an angle on that if you want. Here's the angle on that shows you that everyone understand Reckless is such a princess, Monty. We all live in Reckless's world and we just forget about it. Here's why, right? Is this a joke? Does no one remember why Reckless wasn't in Fnatic the last 2 times? Last 2 times he left Fnatic without even telling them, by the way. So I can tell you for a fact, Monty, in season 4 off-season, I heard during Worlds that he was going to leave and join Alliance. And in the off-season, if you remember, Fnatic was talking to me about being the coach of Fnatic and telling me, we think we've got Reckless and other ones. And I was telling them, you haven't. So Reckless, when he was young, after 1 year with Fnatic, upped and left them, implied he would stay. Then, obviously, at the end of 2020, he left and joined G2 as a free agent. But remember the story that Carlos told on the Crackdown? Reckless basically told fucking Sam Matthews, like, I'll stay verbally, and then just changed his mind and went to G2. So the idea now, after a dog shit fucking opening section to this split, when he's come back to Fnatic after his time in the RLs, he's like, wow, you didn't tell me that this, you sold me a false bill of goods. Who the fuck are you? Who are you? You know what I mean? Like, at this point in time, Sam Matthews is almost justified in torturing this fucker. Like, he deserves it, because have you noticed how, and this is why his fans are just so fucked in the head, nothing Reckless ever does has consequences, mate. He never gets, his just desserts. He never made his own bed and has to rest in it. They're all like, what's all this sick in here? I know Reckless was sick last night, but why is his bed full of sick? He shouldn't have to sleep in a bed full of sick. It's like, mate, he made the fucking bed. He did all this to himself. Because like, notice the angle that people aren't pointing out is he did play like shit. You know what I mean? Like, he did play pretty bad, guys. Like, he would deserve to be replaced. And we're not talking about chopped liver here. We're not saying, Monty, to replace him with Neon. We're saying to replace him with Upset. Like, the guy who last time we saw him looked like the most bona fide ADC in years.
Also still under contract with Fnatic, by the way.
And this is where people don't get it correct. Remember, Fnatic never chose Reckless over Upset. Upset said no to playing in Fnatic. By the way, it was implied because he didn't think Fnatic, the org, and some of the players were serious enough. So what he said was, rather than do another split where I get blamed, I'm not going to play. And he even said, I alluded to this on talk shows, he would come back, but only if it was on a contender. So quite frankly, it doesn't surprise me at all that Fnatic tried. It's just I don't think they were ever going to get him back anyway. So the entire story's moot. Like, that's the worst part, Monty. They're probably going gonna let this cocksucker play again, Reckless. So people are gonna have a pity party for how he felt for one day, finding out that Fnatic would have had Upset, but aren't even gonna get him. And then after that, he still gets to play and earn all the money. Come on, bro. This is not a corrupt fucking space esports. This is trash, mate. This is trash.
I mean, I am very excited. I mean, to be fair, though, I have been excited about every Vitality move over the last 2 years. So I don't know what to believe anymore. We've been burned a few times.
This is the best one, though, mate. Because here's the thing. I mean, I can tell you, I've watched this guy's whole career. I don't think Upset has ever even been close to bad, mate. Even his worst split ever, he'd be what, like, slightly above average in the LEC. Like, the guy's just, he has an unbelievable flaw in his game. So, like, I don't think he individually is going to play bad in this team, mate. I think it's just, this team should be fucking mega. I don't know what's going to happen with Kaiser, obviously, but the rest of the team looks banging, mate.
Well, Kaiser at least has the meta trending in his direction as Riot continues to push for balancing of melee supports. And it was announced that it looks like patch 13.6 is going to be the MSI patch. So we will be able, like, it's going to be, they've released the preview for 13.5 right now, but we'll get some more weeks, obviously, in playoffs, probably of data on 13.4 and 13.5 before they do the final balancing. But we are starting to legitimately see more melee supports already on 13.3. And I think with their stated goals of that trend continuing, it should overall be a pretty good transition to a champion pool that Kaiser will be more comfortable with. And I think Vitality is smart to make this change. I can't imagine it was a cheap change to bring Upset on, considering he, I think, was still contracted to Fnatic and probably had a buyout associated with him. But they have to get what they can in this scenario if he doesn't want to play for you. And obviously, that's extremely exciting news for Fnatic. And I agree that this team, if they can't do it with this roster, I don't know when they're ever going to do it. Right? And some people will say, well, how does this change the balance of the team? Does Photon have to play weak side? If you actually look at Photon's champion history, his most played champion is Gnar in the top lane. If we go back to his time in Korea in the Challengers League, it's not that he hasn't played a bunch of these champions. He just didn't do it in the LEC. He possibly didn't do it because the bot lane was performing so badly that somebody else had to carry on this roster, guys. We don't know what he is going to look like if they start playing more aggressively through the bot lane and don't have to triage the bot lane dying in the first 1.5 to 3 minutes of the game. His most played champions are Gnar, Gwen, Renekton, Gragas, Sejuani. It's a lot of tanks and potential weak side picks in the top lane there. So just something to think about. I think Photon will be fine. He's proven that he's actually quite flexible in terms of his map play with the team. And I think he'll be quite flexible in this champion pool as well.
Also, you just have to remember we're in the West. If you're in the West, like, unless you have a rare case, like Alfari on Team Liquid would be an example of the LCS that 1 year. It's very rare you can actually play primarily through the top laner. By default, it's way more likely the top laner has to just eat the dick and fucking do weak side, and the ADC be the one who gets played through. That's just, like the chat. It's very rare that you're ever actually weak side in ADC in fucking the West, mate. We're just not a top lane set of regions. That's the LPL that can fucking run through top lane all day long. Yeah, so to me, it's a better problem to have, as it were. Like, I'd rather ask the question, Monty, can Photon weak side than can I somehow make this like mad neon thing that's just not working work where we just keep banging our head against the wall. In fact, I even think on that one, by the way, the ultimate death knell if you're neon is that storyline that we tried to build up in his favor, which is his own coach from Misfits joined. Like, bro, that guy had you for the whole year. Like, if he had you the whole year and then this team it didn't work, there's nothing else he could do. He's obviously tried everything he could, you know, just didn't work.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that was the biggest surprise is that Carter himself was not able to get Neon to work in this roster. So I think probably takes a lot too for the organization and for the coach to make this decision because he most likely convinced Neon to come over here with him, or a reason he was hired was because Neon was coming over to this team, and he had been very successful at activating his players and particularly Neon before, but it just hasn't borne fruit and something needed to change or else they were going to probably repeat these performances. And the bot lane, you know, it's impressive they got as far as they did with the bot lane having these really tragic performances, but it just kept getting worse and worse as we got into playoffs. They deserve their standing, frankly, Vitality. And I'm hopeful that this will rejuvenate this roster, because after watching those LEC playoffs, I have to say, G2 looks good. The rest of Europe doesn't look great right now. There was a pretty significant gap. And I would
see
like
more cool,
Europe very
funny,
much to
interesting
send two
clips
strong
based on
teams to
topics
MSI,
from my
and I'm just
content.
not sure
Well,
that's going to
subscribe to
happen
this channel
unless
then, or,
Vitality
you know,
massively
be a
improves
pleb
based
and
on
don't.
that.